All right, well, it looks like 7 o'clock is upon us. So we could come to order and call the roll.
Maria Ryan.
Here?
Bart Bartles.
Here.
Morgan Johnston.
Here.
Todd Rusk. Here. Andrew Stump. Rachel Valenga. Steve Wald.
It looks like we have a quorum, and I did get notice from Rachel that she would be absent. Andrew might or might not be able to join us later, and Steve is just going to be a little bit late. But we do have a quorum, so let's move forward. Do we have any changes to the agenda this evening?
Nope.
All right, let's move to the minutes from the previous meeting. Let's go ahead and get a motion on the floor, and then if there's any changes, we can take that by way of amendment.
I'll move. And I can second.
Okay. Are there any changes? I just noted a very minor one, that the meeting date was shown as May 3rd instead of May 5th. And then, of course, Kate, caught me yesterday thinking it was May 4th. So but if that amendment is acceptable to the mover and the seconder.
Sure.
All right. Okay. Any other changes? All those in favor of approving the minutes as amended signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? All right. Let's move on to public input. Are there any members of the public that wish to address us this evening? Okay, seeing none, let's move to communications and our monthly staff report.
Good evening. First on the staff report are some updates on the climate action plan. I wanted to share that the Citizens Utility Board and Environmental Defense Fund filed a proposal with the Illinois Commerce Commission, and that's asking them to create some programs for community solar. So this would be an off-site solar energy installation where individual panels are kind of sold off to other houses or commercial facilities, say in town. And then the consumption at one site and the production on the other are net metered on the bill. So that's important because pursuing different avenues to improve the local solar market is part of our climate action goals. And we also sent a letter that in part asked Ameren to support community solar and virtual net metering, or meter aggregation as it's called in Illinois. I'm going to skip the clean jobs bill section here because that's an agenda item we'll talk about later.
Hey, Scott.
Yeah.
So that is the proposal you just described is separate from the clean jobs bill?
Correct.
Okay.
And I don't know what the legal basis is for the Illinois Commerce Commission to act on that proposal. I just know that they made such a proposal. I presume that they're referencing some existing law, but I don't know those details.
Timing.
What's that?
Interesting timing.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things going on. Wanted to share that the Urbana-Champaign Energy Star Challenge has launched a 2015 round, and we've got 40 buildings registered so far. So we'll be running a second round of that competition, working to engage building owners and managers to benchmark, track, and improve their energy use with Energy Star Portfolio Manager. I think the Urbana City building is still in 5th place. I didn't check right before I came, but I think we're still in 5th place in Illinois Green Office Challenge. Is that right, Bart?
I cannot confirm.
Okay. Can
What
I confirm or deny?
Can tell you is we're verifying everything right now, and then we are collecting data for energy reduction over the course of the challenge, and then those points will be added in as well. So the leaderboard will change a little bit, I think, in the next month before the awards are given out. So
Okay.
that's
Very
where we
good.
stand.
I have some notes here about public engagement that staff participated in. I also wanted to share that the mayor and council are updating their goals document. This is kind of a status update more than a brand new version, but I've posted the web link where you can find the most recent copy of that. An item that was in our sustainable water management plan that we started work on a long time ago but was then dropped is this item or stalled was this item to evaluate the current and potential public access to recreational waters in the city. The Regional Planning Commission is supporting the city with that analysis, and the individual that was working on that before moved away, so then there was a pause in that project. It's now being picked up again, and hope to maybe finish that in the next month or so with RPC.
Scott, did that move the needle on the graph at all? It looked like the graph was pretty much the same as last month, and I didn't know if that was...
I think it is,
Okay.
yeah. Well, the status hasn't changed because we started working on it. It's been in process. It's still in process. We finished up, or our vendor finished up data for our electronics recycling event. You can see the total collected there, and if you have any questions, Courtney will be here. She's here. She'll be speaking in a minute, and you can ask questions on that particular event of her. Important announcement: the electronic products recycling bill has passed the House, and so a bill is now in the Senate. This is a bill that the city is supporting. It would fix the state's electronics recycling goal, which is kind of leaving cities high and dry early in the year in terms of having the ability to work with manufacturers to recycle electronics. So that bill is moving forward. Our next SAC meeting would be June 2nd at 7 p.m. in council chambers.
Great. Are there any questions or comments for staff? All right. Let's move to our next item. Courtney Kwong is here to talk to us about Urbana Waste Diversion Report.
Okay. Good evening. Tonight I'm going to talk a little bit about the waste diversion report that we conducted for 2014 data. Let's get this here. I don't know if you have the memo. I'm sorry?
Very short question. Is it fiscal year 14 or calendar year?
Oh, that's a good question. Calendar year 2014. I'm not sure if you have a memo in front of you. No. But I have kind of highlighted some of the findings of the survey we provided to our hauler, and they provide us data every year in terms of what was estimated to be landfilled, recycled, and composted in the city. And we have about 16 haulers that provide us information. So right here, you'll see waste generation in 2014 was 43,730 tons. And of that total, about 9,400 tons was recycled, 4,900 tons was composted, and a little over 29,000 tons was landfilled in the city. And here's just kind of a pie chart to give you a visual of what was recycled and composted and landfilled as well. And just to kind of give you an overview, U-Cycle, within the U-Cycle program, curbside and multifamily programs have seen increases since 1999. And I use that data because our multifamily program began in that year, so I also thought that would be a good starting point to kind of look at the data. Our curbside program now exceeds 2,000 tons per year. So households in single family through 4-unit housing, that's what encompasses the curbside program. So we collected 2,209 tons in 2014 from our curbside program. Multifamily program averages less, 650 tons per year, and is the average, and we collected 704 tons in 2014. And I'll give you a chart here. Of that total, I should say that U-Cycle total in 2014 was 2,913 tons for both programs combined. And here's a chart showing U-Cycle curbside totals since 1999. So that, again, that's single family through 4-unit housing. So you can see the increase as the years go by. There was about 2005, the mid-2000s, pretty much there wasn't much increase, but it was pretty consistent levels around just over 1,500 tons a year. And we saw an increase in 2012. So that's a good point. That's when we reached the 2,000-ton mark, over the 2,000-ton mark. So you can see that on the chart as well.
Courtney, are you going to talk about some of the analysis behind these? Like, do we know, is there something that happened in 2012?
In 2012, so basically all this data, 2012, and this was our year of, in both programs that we saw increases. I don't have a whole lot of data of just kind of guessing that maybe it was improvement in the economy, possibly, because these are curbside totals, so that they're pretty accurate. Our tonnages for curbside and multifamily are given to us by our contractors. So it was outreach and promotion efforts maybe in 2012, and maybe an improvement in the economy were the reasons I was thinking it could be the increase.
What about the population size? Do we have some comparison to, because this is the lump sum while the city maybe grew? I actually don't know.
And that's a good point. I didn't check the population in terms of curbside population totals housing. Maybe there was more participants. I know we don't have much new housing in the city, but in terms of participation, I do know our participation rate in the U-Cycle program is 69. It's over 60%. So, and 69% of households have the U-Cart. 69% of households. So we have about 31% of households that, according to our data, may not have the U-Card or are not participating possibly, but that's kind of what we're trying to reach, is that last 30%. But that is a good point. It could be just the increase in households participating those years as well. And our multifamily program, pretty consistent levels since 1999. Again, it averages about 650 tons per year. We have over 9,000 multifamily units, which is 5 units and greater, in the city of Urbana. So that's been kind of consistent the last 5-6 years. We haven't seen too much growth. We haven't had too many new units being built, or new construction. And so this is kind of typical for multifamily. It's a little bit more, it's a little bit harder to get outreach going, but again, in 2012, there was a little increase as well. So that year in particular, it may have just been outreach efforts, or maybe just some kind of an improvement overall in the economy, but I'm not sure.
Just another question about that. I think that, if I remember correctly, Charlie told me that the U-Cycle program started taking film plastics. Do you know when that was? Was that?
That was in 2011,
12?
so that may have been an increase because people began realizing it's a very lightweight material, so I'm not sure in terms of tonnage is based on weight, but it's possible more people were recycling that kind of material. That was probably the only new thing we included during that contractual year, and that was started in 2011. But that could be part of the increase as well. We did start taking plastic shopping bags.
I just didn't know if there were other changes that happened as far as the materials that were collected over the
not really. So
Any change in the amount of landfill waste? I wonder if landfill waste and recycling go. Do we have a similar chart for maybe you're going to present that?
That will be soon coming up. But yeah, it kind of goes hand in hand.
Just excited about it. It's okay.
With the increase in landfill and overall, just an increase in waste generation overall. So, and I'll show you that in just a minute. And in 2014, in calendar year 2014, Urbana recycled and composted, so both landscape and our commodity recycling, 14,370 tons. And I kind of wanted to see the greenhouse gas emissions conversions or calculations. I converted using an US EPA calculator just to get an idea of what kind of CO2 emissions were avoided by recycling and composting in the city of Urbana. And about 49,000 tons of avoided CO2 emissions is what it came up with, which is equivalent to removing about 128,000 vehicles from Urbana roadways, installing 13 wind turbines in Urbana, reducing about 4,500 Urbana homes' energy use for 1 year, and was equivalent to the carbon sequestered by about 40,000 acres of U.S. forests in 1 year. So citywide hauler data has been tracked since 2011, and that's basically where we ask haulers to fill out a form on a calendar year basis, and they are asked to basically give us the estimates of the amount of garbage, recycling, and landscape waste that they collect from Urbana residents and commercial entities, commercial properties. And I say estimates because most of the haulers will also have, they can't really separate the data, so they, in terms of they pick up stuff from Champaign and other surrounding communities. So they gave us the best estimates they can for the amount of garbage, recycling, and landscape waste that they pick up from Urbana accounts. And I'll show you a chart after this here, but comparing 2014 data to 2011, when we started tracking the data, we saw a 84% increase in recyclables collected since 2014, 191% increase in landscape trimmings composted. We also saw a 14% increase in garbage landfilled, and we saw a diversion rate increase of about 12% since 2011. And this is a chart that just kind of shows the data from each year since 2011, amount recycled, composted, meaning landscape trimmings, landfilled, the total waste generated in those calendar years, and the diversion rate. And again, that's information that we receive from our haulers and their estimates on the data that they believe they collected from the City of Urbana accounts.
Are these units tons or yards?
And yes,
or?
these are units that are in tons. I apologize. They're in tons, yes. So in this year, and I'll go over this a little bit further, but we saw a diversion rate of 33%. So a little bit less than last year. But again, there could be fluctuations in terms of the way haulers are estimating the data. There could be more or less projects going on depending on the year as well in terms of materials they collect from construction and demolition, which is included in these totals, and other projects as well, roadway projects and aggregate.
Courtney, where would the construction show up in here? Is it, is there a, I don't know, is there a city ordinance for recycling construction debris?
There isn't. It may end up in the landfill category, but I think there's a couple haulers that take materials to Bloomington. There's a C&D recycler. I think there's at least one or two I've talked to that take some material over there, but not I don't know of a whole lot going on. I am looking forward to them coming to Urbana though, so we hope to see a little bit more.
But it wouldn't be in the recycled because that's the U-cycle?
I apologize. Yeah, recycle includes actually everything. It includes U-cycle. 30% of that total, the 9415, is accounts for U-cycle materials for 2014, for example. And the rest is material recycling from commercial accounts, so businesses, and other projects. So it could be construction and demolition, recycling, maybe roadway projects, any other city projects that recycle materials. So if they recycle concrete for a roadway project, that's included under the recycled column as well. So it includes everything, including U-Cycle as well. So,
And the charts we saw before are U-Cycle residential.
right, that's
Okay,
correct.
Curbside.
That's
Okay.
correct, yes. And here's an overview, again, citywide recycled, and I think I wrote down, so yes, and this is where includes everything from U-Cycle, commercial accounts, construction and demolition, any other kind of projects that would be able to recycle materials locally for the most part. So these are the totals from every year. 2011's a little low because that's the first year. Haulers weren't notified until the middle of 2011 that they were to collect that data as part of an ordinance. So that year isn't completely filled out. But then starting in 2012, I think that starts where we have a little bit more accurate data. And so, as you can see, there was an increase in 2013, I'm sorry, as well. And it just depends on the haulers' estimates that they provide to us as well. So
it might be nice to see this chart broken down by sort of the data source, right? So you have the amount that was recycled according to U-Cycle and then the other information. Because I'm curious about the 13 to 14 drop. It doesn't make sense to me off the top of my head why it would go down, unless maybe it was a lot of construction or something to that effect in 13.
And that's what, I definitely have the information for U-Cycle. For the hauler, it's a little more fuzzy. We don't require them to give us specifics, but we just say, it's kind of all combined. So, but I certainly can add that in next time and separate the two so you can see the U-Cycle in comparison to other recycling within the city.
I just want to say that with the University of Illinois tracking of our waste, a lot of it, again, is very similar where we have to do an estimate. For our yard waste, we go and take a look at it about twice a year and estimate how many cubic yards that is, and then guess, translate that, I suppose, to the tonnage. So I understand the difficulties in getting this information, but it'd be good to share what numbers went into the graph, even though there are a lot of estimates, I'm sure.
Sure. And then the composting as well from 2011 to 2014. That's a little bit more consistent, but that's just a number. I think we calculated about 30% of the material that goes to the Landscape Recycling Center comes from Urbana residents or accounts or haulers.
So is that where the big change is? I mean, this is a dramatic shift to 4,000, 3,000. Can't do math. Was there something that happened at the Landscape Recycling Center in 12?
In 2012?
Do you know?
Again, not that I was aware of, not in 2012 at least. And again, we're just kind of relying on the data from our haulers and the estimates we come up with for some of the Urbana stuff. But mainly it's what our haulers provide us. So every year, I talk to our haulers. I said maybe come up with a calculator of what you think will work with your accounts, but it is a little difficult. So I wish I had a little bit more information, but from our haulers. But yeah, that's basically the amount that they gave to us. That they say that
composted, instead of coming from the LRC reports of some kind, it's coming from the haulers.
Some of it is coming from, so the stuff that's from the city U-Cycle program, where we have collections in the spring and fall. We have that in that data. That's a little bit more. We got that data. It's more secure. We have that from our contractor.
Mm-hmm.
But the other data is just estimates from haulers on how much material they bring in, and how much we bring in, or residents may bring in as well. And they estimate about 30%.
Trying to remember, just personally using the Landscape Recycling Center, you fill out paperwork and you pay a bill. That data is not collected about where that waste is originating. I can't remember whether I put my zip code or my address.
I've asked them before, and I don't think so. I don't think they. I don't know. I don't think they keep that data. Actually,
Yeah,
so.
Steve, a lot for the university's waste, we have there's a handwritten report every day but it's not in electronic format, so it's cumbersome to get totals out of, and it could be the same situation.
At present, the LRC is using like a carbon copy triplicate. So I'm not certain about whether how they compile that or whether they compile that and what level of specificity there is. But I think it's worth looking into whether we could reconcile the LRC receipts to what our haulers are reporting to us in their annual reports.
Okay.
Does it work that way with other recycling? Are the various haulers dropping off at a single recycling vendor? Do they go to multiple places? Could you collect recycling data from receiving centers? I'm sorry, I'm speaking out of beyond my own knowledge of how that end of it works. So,
Well, they probably, there's several places they could take it to. There's the transfer station in Urbana run by Republic Services. There's ABC Sanitary, one of our contractors. There's Community Resource. So there's a couple in the area. We don't ask them to disclose where, we ask them where they disclose where they take it, but we don't know, I don't know if they, how they track it. I think they usually, with the recycling, they use one truck and they collect from not only Urbana but Champaign accounts, and then they just kind of estimate, maybe 40% of this is from Urbana accounts, and then they give us those figures. But it's not an exact science. I wish we had a little bit more data on that. But the use cycle is much clearer because we just have one dedicated truck, but everything else is just kind of an estimate. But that's a good question.
If we were to flip the obligation from the haulers to the transfer stations or the landfills, we would run into the problem that Urbana Waste and Urbana Waste and potentially recycling is going to landfills outside of our jurisdiction, where we wouldn't be able to impose upon the transfer station or landfill to give us the data. So there are challenges and gray areas and estimations no matter where you go.
And here it shows, again, with 2013, with the increase we saw with recycling and landfilling, there was or composting rather, there was also an increase in landfilling. So it kind of goes hand in hand that year. I'm assuming there's just, according to the data, more waste generated in 2013. And it kind of coincides with what was recycled and landfilled and composted, that year. So in 2013, there was about just over 30,000 tons recycled. 2014, just under 30,000. But you can see the chart. It kind of goes up and down, but I think it just depends on different factors, mainly maybe on the data from our haulers and possibly the economic conditions, and maybe projects that are going on in the city as well. We have some haulers that are roll-off haulers, and they collect materials from construction projects or roadway projects and things like that based on weight. That might have an effect on things as well, depending on what. And if I remember correctly, there were some city projects going on last year that, or rather in 2013, that maybe warranted some of this material as well. And then here's just showing the composting trends, recycling, and landfill trends from 2011 to 2014 in terms of amounts recycled and composted and landfilled every year. Obviously, we have work to do. We would like to see the recycled and composted areas higher targets for those tons collected. And I hope to do that in the future with other projects and possibly implementing new programs for the city. But you can kind of get a visual of what's going on there. And then overall for 2014, I think I showed you the chart earlier, but we had a 33% diversion rate, which is on par for the national average currently. For 2014.
Could you go back a slide?
Oh, sure.
So you were saying that the information from the haulers got, we just started requesting it in 2011, and so 12 is going to be much better data. Is that true for the landfill information as well, or just the recycling and compost?
For all the information.
All of it, okay.
Yeah, we asked them what the haulers, their estimates for landfill material or garbage from Urbana accounts, and then recycling and compost landscape as well. So 2011 data is a little off just because we didn't ask for that data right off the bat, and they weren't as prepared to collect it and for estimates. In 2012, I would say would be a better view of what's going on. But
So when you go back to the graph that shows back to the 90s or 99, where is that data coming from?
and this data, I should clarify.
Because 11 match, it looks to me, like if I were to guess, I would say that, oh, that's all U-Cycle.
And this is for U-Cycle. So this is just a segment of all the recycling just for the U-Cycle program, and that we collect through our contractual data collection. And that, as you can see, curbside has gone up quite a bit over the years. It leveled out in the mid-2000s and then kind of went up in 2012. And since then, we've seen over 2,000 tons collected per year. And then the multifamily has been pretty level. The average is about 650 tons, between 600 and 700 tons per year. And again, that's just U-Cycle data for those charts here. I'll go back to diversion. So the national diversion rate is about the same right now. Again, we want to get that higher, and again, we kind of are. It's just a reflection on what we can get from our haulers, but we can try to work a little bit harder to make sure I get a little bit more accurate data, or try to maybe get some more data from Landscape Recycling Center and things like that. And here's the diversion rates. So 2012, we saw about 45%. It was a little under 45%. It was like 44.7%, I believe. 2013 was over 40%. And then 2014 was 33%. So again, based on maybe possible projects going on in the city in terms of what material was collected and recycled. And basically, in conclusion, basically we want to continue to increase those diversion rates, to ask haulers to provide the most accurate data as possible, and also for haulers to promote recycling to their commercial accounts. So we have an ordinance where haulers are required to offer recycling to businesses, and it is up to the haulers to do that. But we want to probably encourage them to promote that more to the business sector, and to see more recycling at that end of things, and also continue with U-Cycle outreach efforts, continue to promote waste reduction activities, and then also future expansion of U-Cycle program that could include possibly more commodities or even food scrap would definitely bring up the diversion levels.
So what has happened as far as the conversations about food scrap? Because a couple of years ago, I understood the Landscape Recycling Center was looking into options for that, just considering it as a possibility. Do you have some history of that you could share, and sort of where we're at as far as what could happen?
I know they are. They can collect some food scrap, and I know we've talked with them regarding, possibly having a pilot program in the future. And I think they're thinking about it. They want to kind of go, maybe just try out something in-house to see how it goes. I know they're concerned about odor vectors. There's many issues. Another issue is there's a lot of food scrap programs use these bio bags, and they want to see how those really work out. Sometimes they don't break down completely, and it depends on what kind of operation you have. They have a windrow operation there, which still heats up material significantly, but there's some commercial composting facilities that are larger and might be able to accommodate those plastic bags, or I shouldn't say plastic bags, bio bags better. But I think there was concern that they might not break down. I think they tried those in the past, and they want to kind of test things out before they pursue that. That's one of the things that you would collect those food scrap in for most programs, even pilot programs. And it's kind of time consuming to empty all the food scrap out of bags. But I think they want to try that out first and see what happens. I don't know if
Courtney, thanks for sharing that. If I might jump in, I would love to participate in pilot programs, as we've talked about before. And to the extent where we could actually tailor make the material to whatever content they would like coming in.
Okay.
If bio bags are the problem, we'll do it without bio bags. However they want the material coming in,
Okay.
we can provide that and tailor make it to what works the best for them. So however we can collaborate on that, I would love to take that on.
Well, and for example, I know that a lot of the major the events, the community events, are interested in going towards zero waste, and we don't have a good solution for the compost side of it. So I understand that Illinois Marathon was looking into their possibilities of going to zero waste. That's obviously, I think that's the biggest event that we have each year, but it's a huge event. And so maybe there's an option for piloting it by focusing in on a couple of select events where it's, not getting into a constant operational process at first, but doing, here's one thing, let's try this, and here's one thing. We did a similar thing with, in collaboration with the Illinois Sustainable Technology Center for a basketball game for homecoming, and now we're looking at doing it again. But right now, we have to, from the university, we have to send it either out of town, or I think we send it out of town. But so it'd be nice to be able to have that food scrap pilot be in collaboration with the one-off events that we're doing as a community.
So I'd like to add a couple things. First, Courtney's done a really excellent policy study of food scrap collection systems in other cities. She chose 3 cities and did a really deep dive on a whole bunch of characteristics and how each of the cities handles their program and what the services are that they offer. So we have a really good idea of what other people are doing. Additionally, as Courtney mentioned, the LRC has amended their existing permit so they can accept, I think it's up to 10% of their total volume as food scrap, some percentage. They're now permitted. So we've made that change and advanced that far. Additionally, Sweet Corn Festival this year will be collecting corn cobs, and that will go to the LRC. And so that'll also be a test pilot of food scrap. Now that's probably an easier food scrap to deal with and to compost than like a typical food scrap stream. But again, it's one more step. There are a number of barriers to doing any full-scale program. Courtney mentioned one of them, which is the bio bags. This is a smaller scale landscape recycling facility or organics facility than, say, the large commercial facilities around Chicago. And they're selling retail. What that means is the product has to look perfect. It can't have shreds of what looks like plastic bags. This facility is enterprise funded, so they're dependent on their own sales. So the product's really important. Additionally, because the composting happens at the same place that the retail happens, the piles have to look good. Again, no shreds of what looks like plastic bag. And then finally, because the composting happens at the same location that the retail happens, it has to smell good. And that may be a barrier or at least a challenge for bringing in food scrap. So these are all, challenges that we're identifying, and we're tackling them one at a time. We're going to test the the latest, greatest bio bags, and we're going to test the corn cobs, and we'll see what happens and move on from there.
If I may follow up on the bio bags, we actually ran into an issue with that at the football game as well, just because anytime any real hot material went into a bio bag, it started to melt and break down before we even got it outside. So we had some issues there. And in the future, I think we're just going to go with toters and put it into a dumpster, and then from the dumpster, dump it as is without the bio bag. So there might be bigger concerns with some of the starch-based flatware that hasn't broken down real fast. But I think we could meet your needs as far as pulling this together without the bags.
And I know we've talked to our Arbor Division regarding certain things, and I think if we were to implement a pilot program in the future, there's a concern about bio bags, but also with the biodegradable type cutlery and cups and things like that. And I know there's other communities that have had problems if you have a windrow operation versus a large-scale waste management composting operation, where they can maybe handle that and a little bit more. We talked about that, and I think, and I don't know for sure, but I think we would probably start off with things like food scrap, just fruit and vegetable scraps, and pasta trimmings, things like that. Maybe, I know there was concern about meat and bones and vectors and things like that, so it would be mainly fruit and vegetable scraps, maybe bread, pasta, tea bags, things like that, that are more readily able to break down. But I know that with things like cutlery, even if it says biodegradable, the cups, the cutlery, things like that, that's more of a concern. It would be interesting to see a small scale plot to see if we can, what would happen to that material. But I think we had discussed that some of the communities we looked at that were a little bit smaller scale. There was a community in Iowa that they have a little more smaller scale operation where they mainly just worked on fruit and vegetable scraps and things like that to start off, and that worked out a little bit better. But
additionally, regarding the bags, for a U of I football game or Illinois Marathon, as you said, Bart, they may be able to just put it in the toters and dump it into the next container and ship it off and so forth, especially when you have volunteers that you can have clean out the toters after they've tipped them. One of the things that we learned when Courtney was evaluating these other cities is that if you don't have some sort of bag during the winter, you get a lot of food scrap freezing. So that seemed to be why a lot of facilities were using a bag. Possibly a paper bag would work, and those compost pretty well at the LRC. But that's one of the reasons why, in terms of the final endpoint for all this, which would be a curbside collection, that's a serious concern. But I see, I take your point in terms of like a summertime event.
Yeah, we're flexible. There's just such a demand for it. It's the consistent barrier to zero waste events over and over again. And as an alternative right now, I'm considering spending, I did spend $1,700 to take this to Bloomington, just so we could, for the game, just so we could compost. And so tipping fee-wise, it's not hard to be a better option. That's what I'm saying.
well, thank you for letting me know about this, and I will bring this up as a consideration.
I'm curious
For a
which
special
cities you reviewed.
I'm sorry?
Can you, I'm just curious which cities you looked into.
Yes, Hennepin County, Minnesota was the largest area. It was over 1 million people. I kind of did different areas in the Midwest. Oak Park, village of Oak Park, which is similar in population to Urbana, and then Dubuque, Iowa as well. So they're all kind of, I focus on Midwestern communities that are kind of similar in terms of climate, so we can kind of get an idea. And then from large city scale, which was interesting, that Hennepin County is really advanced because they have a more commercial size recycling. And then we have Village of Oak Park, and they take their stuff to waste management. They're close enough to the large waste management composting facility in the Chicago area. And then Dubuque has a similar operation that we do as well here in Urbana. So it's kind of interesting to get all the sides of the story. I think the bio bags were a concern for many of the communities they're trying to deal with. Yeah, just it was interesting to find out. I think Village of Oak Park, Dubuque, they are not taking meat and bones and things like that. So it's kind of interesting to see that in terms of what they'll accept and what problems they've had. And usually the issues that they did say were vector issues and odor was a concern for some of the facilities. In general, nothing too significant, but just a concern. And I know in Urbana we have some housing near our landscape recycling center, so that might be a concern as well. So we want to kind of look at all sides of everything as we proceed.
An alternate strategy to composting. I'm just thinking about in the last couple of years, I visited probably, 10 dozen wastewater treatment plants around the state, and I've been surprised at how many of them, maybe half of them, said that they were interested in getting more high power organic waste because they have, these are anaerobic digestion plants, and so some of them are interested in getting more waste because they're interested in doing more cogeneration. They want to generate more electricity than they're currently able to with the waste stream that they have, and they can do that with the with the methane that comes off of it. So just to throw out another option. And I haven't I haven't visited the sanitary district locally here, and I think I know that the nearest one is not an anaerobic digester plant, and I don't know how they would respond to that. But just to report, there are wastewater treatment plants that are interested, and they haven't talked about food waste specifically, but that's something that's out there. And then I had a question for you. So we spent a lot of time talking about food scraps. So I'm in just generally it seems like that's a pretty good chunk of our landfill waste. But I wonder if we just put that one aside, if you have other thoughts on opportunities to increase diversion rates, whether it's identifying more recycling or other beneficial uses, or even like waste reduction opportunities on the, on the source side. And I wonder if you have thoughts on that.
Well, I think in terms of recycling, it would be beneficial to have more commercial accounts or more business recycling available. Also, construction and demolition recycling. I think once that facility comes into Urbana, that will be a large chunk of material as well, and certainly would be beneficial to any projects that are going on. I think that will be a good way to at least divert waste to recycling. Waste reduction activities. Other education is important. Outreach about issues. I would love to go into organics. That would be, make sure people, only purchase what they need, that kind of thing. And I teach that in the schools and stuff like that, and reuse things. But I would say, the next sectors would be other than food scrap, maybe the C&D sector. More recycling among businesses and industry, and we don't have a lot of industry, but businesses in Urbana that could partake. And at this point, I would say that's all I could think of.
Do you have any sense of where So now, once they become recycled, they're commodities. And do we have any sense of where they go? Where do those commodities go? And do we have a sense of, what's the life of our recycled materials, after we're done with them?
Well, I talked to, the market's changed, and so our contractors, for example, go to different markets to sell their commodity types. So, for example, I know with ABC, I've talked to them, their plastic PET bottles, so like soda bottles or water bottles, they're sent to a facility, a carpet manufacturer in Georgia called Mohawk Industries, and that's made into what they call recycled carpet. So they use soda bottles, plastic pellets, use plastic in the carpeting. So that's that goes to make recycled carpet. So you may have seen something called green carpet if you go to a carpet place. There's a lot of, trying to think of something, they have metal recycling, of course, that goes to actually Max Twin City to be remade into metal commodities. But it kind of just depends on the markets where these things are shipped and taken to. But it just varies. But
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Other questions or comments for Courtney? No. Well, thank you very much. This is
You're welcome. Thank
really
you.
good information to have.
Thanks.
All right. We do not have any continuing business before us, so let's move to new business, to state energy legislation.
Maria, before we get into that, there was one printout that I had for you all that I forgot to mention during staff report, and I'll pass it out now. It's regarding Ameren's proposed, not accepted by the state yet, but proposed prices for their default electricity supply rate for residential. The summary there is that our municipal electric aggregation price is going to be substantially below Ameren's price for the final year of our existing contract. So I'll give that to you. That's probably an extra. So there's a very substantial bill that's been introduced by a coalition of organizations in the state. It's called the Clean Jobs Bill. I've got the Senate bill and the House bill numbers in your packet, and I've got a bullet point summary. There are other summaries. I've shared articles that have discussed the bill with you all. And so I'll just mention a couple of the highlights, and we can discuss it. Some of the highlights are it would move from what is the current status quo, where state law allows investor-owned utilities to support virtual net metering or meter aggregation, to requiring that they support virtual net metering. And that's going to allow this model of community solar or off-site solar. It extends the renewable portfolio standard from 25% top out to 35%. And I think that it actually extends the time frame to 2030. I think it's maybe 2025 currently. It requires state procurement of distributed solar and low-income solar as part of the compliance with the renewable portfolio standard. I have in this next line that it requires cap and invest. I fixed that later on down this bullet point, but that's actually incorrect. It authorizes the state to use a cap and invest system to comply with federal Clean Power Plan rules if and when they come into effect. So that the language is such that the state would be allowed to use cap and invest, but potentially they could use a different type of system to come into compliance with those proposed rules. Set some standards for what qualifies as a clean coal facility, and also creates a cost-effective clean coal portfolio standard. So that's kind of a cost control and a limitation. If clean coal can't meet that cost-effective standard, and there's more detail on it in the bill, then that portfolio standard doesn't proceed. Removes this funding for this area of business from sweeps. Increases energy efficiency goals to 20% savings by 2025. Requires demand response programs. It has a carve out for energy efficiency for low income households. Requires measurement of the job creation impact from these activities in the bill. Creates real-time pricing tariffs, and also requires meter installation where it isn't already going in to facilitate that. I think when they're talking about real-time pricing capable meters, I think that is probably one and the same with the smart meters that are already being rolled out. But I may be wrong about that, but they seem to be the same thing to me. Requires utility funding of low-income energy bill support programs. Requires smart grid testing centers. Requires residential on-bill financing. Ameren actually just recapitalized their on-bill financing programs, so that's really important. But this would require investor-owned utilities to do that. Prescribes how alternative retail electric suppliers comply with the renewable portfolio standard. That's the fix. That's the RPS fix. Requires state development of a compliance plan with considerations for environmental justice if a federal Clean Power Plan rule is implemented, and allows the state to, well, as I mentioned before, allows the state to create a cap and invest program to come into compliance with the Clean Power Program. Some of these things are in our climate action plan, and so that's encouraging. One item that's not in here that we're really interested in is better data access. A couple different ways that we would benefit from better data access. One is easier access to community aggregated gas and electric consumption. Ameren's been pretty good the last 2 years about getting us that data. But I think that should be something that's really easily accessible to Urbana, but also other cities that are looking to tackle greenhouse gas pollution from their own city. And then also data access to individual commercial customers through Energy Star Portfolio Manager Web Services API. That's where the data that's in Ameren servers for an individual commercial building would automatically be ported over to their portfolio manager account, so they can see it, analyze it, and apply for Energy Star status for their building. So those things aren't in there. Wish they were, but maybe that's something that can happen in the future.
Are there comments or questions? Or even a discussion of whether we want to take any action with regard to this legislation?
So I might be a little bit behind the news, but did the city council make a statement about this, or the mayor?
No, I don't think there is any motion in city council regarding this bill.
Okay. What's the timeline expected on it right now? Or any news about when they would look at it for consideration?
So I've got the General Assembly, I think they call this the deadlines publication. And it says May 22nd is the final day for third reading and passage of Senate substantive bills. That's kind of technical language, but I think that's a deadline for the Senate passing a bill. So it's a short time frame now, I think.
Although some are saying that nothing is going to happen until the budget gets resolved, which...
Means we have a long time.
Why'd you bring that up?
Well, I'm just saying.
Does this get into low carbon? I'm sorry, because I didn't hear you say it.
No, there is a separate piece of legislation that that is aiming to create a low carbon standard and that's being advanced by a number of interests, including nuclear facility companies, and that's a separate piece of legislation.
Do you know if those are competing? Like, do they contradict each other, or could they both be accepted? I really don't have any introduction to this.
So I haven't gone through that particular piece of legislation in detail, but I think they're really addressing different things. They're measuring different things. They probably could coexist, but I don't know that for sure.
So maybe I'm just thinking out loud here. It sounds like these pieces of legislation are circling back to what we talked about with the Midwest wind energy gentleman who was here at our last meeting with the image, right? So it's one of the arrows. And your question of, do we want to maybe do something? I think it's really hard to decide what would be an appropriate thing to do, considering there's so many issues and forces acting on it that I certainly don't feel informed enough to make a recommendation that we do something at this time about the legislation.
I guess one other piece of information is that this is not the only bill that's being introduced. There are competing bills, one introduced by ComEd and one by Exelon, and those do not have a lot of the benefits that that this one. So if just in terms of preference, my read of those is I would strongly prefer one over the others that are currently in circulation. So in terms of advocacy or speaking up or doing something, one possibility is stating a preference for one over the others, and whether this city would value that and want to carry that forward and express a preference that one of these would help our climate action plan and the others would not. That could be something.
So that's one of the three, but not the fourth, which is about the low carbon with related, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I guess I'm familiar with three. I'm not familiar with the fourth.
I think that we definitely want the laws to reflect what we're trying to achieve with our climate action plan. So I'll make that statement.
Yeah, just a reminder, a few weeks ago I had sent you by email a comparison of the Clean Jobs Bill, the Exelon bill, and the ComEd bill from the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus. So there's some fairly stark differences between the three.
Other comments? Okay. Good.
I did look at that, and from those three, it's obvious that the one that is the, what's it called, the Illinois Clean Jobs Bill, just like you just said, is way better as far as we're concerned. Does the commission, has it in the past made recommendations for the city to say something, or at least say, of these three, we support one over another?
There are a couple of potential appropriate courses of action. One is executive offices like the mayor can send a letter of support to our elected officials, asking them to support a piece of legislation. Another one is council can pass a resolution doing the same, and a commission could send a letter to the mayor or council asking for either of those courses of action as well.
I move that we send a letter to the mayor and the council in support of asking them to support the Clean Jobs bill as opposed to the other two. Is that the right way to say it?
If we can just get the names of the other two from, I was just trying to find, because I remember reading the summary
Sure.
that came from the,
Exelon bill and the ComEd bill, and there's the SB number and the HB numbers. So let me say it again.
yeah, I'm just trying to see where I had, oh, here we go. It's a document called.
Comparison.
Okay, so basically you're looking at SB 1485/HB 2607
Yes.
over SB 1585/HB 3293 or SB 1879/HB 3328.
Yes.
Okay.
I would support that, if only because the Clean Jobs Bill helps us, as opposed to the other bills support a nuclear plant and a coal plant. So just along those lines, I would favor yes, a letter supporting the Clean Jobs Bill.
Is that a second to the motion?
Yours was a.
I didn't. I guess I was a little confused about how to make the motion. Is it, I move that we request city support of the Clean Jobs bill over the other two, that you just listed their numbers.
So I could second that, yes.
Okay. Is there discussion? Steve?
So this comparison chart on Mario's computer, that's the document you emailed the commission this month? And who prepared that?
The Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus.
Is our mayor involved in the caucus?
That's a Chicago area organization.
Okay.
So I don't believe she is.
Are any of the three bills bipartisan?
There's probably a long list of sponsors. I'm very confident that yes, there are both parties supporting all different bills. And
At the meeting last night, the report is that the Clean Jobs bill is bipartisan supported.
Is there further discussion? Okay, I think we're ready for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, that passes. That we do not have any other items of new business tonight, so let's move on to announcements. And it looks like staff have a couple of listed there.
sure, there is May is Bike Month, and I put some information in your packet regarding Bike Month and all the different activities. Bike to Work Day is, I'm trying to pull up the document. Bike to Work Day, May 14th. So there will be stations set up around the city. For Urbana, there will be a station in the Busey Bank parking lot downtown. And I strongly encourage people to register beforehand. And we love tracking all that data, and then come and check in and get your snacks and so forth. And it's just an opportunity for folks to bike together and enjoy the morning biking. Other announcements, there was one other one. Oh, Rain Barrel and Compost Bin Sale is May 16th in the parking lot north of the city building. Strongly encourage people to pre-order their products and skip the purchase part of the line and go straight to the pickup line.
Great. Do we have any other announcements tonight, Morgan?
The the University's Illinois Climate Action Plan was originally written in 2010. We have a draft that is getting ready to go to public comment for just a couple of weeks this month. It should be going out sometime in the next week. We're hoping to have it live for public comment before finals are over. And it will be available through sustainability.illinois.edu. We'd love to hear comments from the community as well as the campus residents.
An additional announcement, I have a news article in the packet. The DeWitt County Board and the company that was working to permit PCBs in the Clinton landfill have come to an agreement whereby the company will decline to continue pursuing PCB landfilling. And so the city was engaged in lawsuits and other advocacy activities to prevent the storage, the landfilling of PCBs in this particular landfill because it is situated over the Muhammad Aquifer. This is not a legal decision that says that it can't be done. It's just the parties coming to an agreement saying that they're no longer going to pursue that activity in that place at this time.
Other announcements? All right. Seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
I can second that.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? All right, we are adjourned.